Much like a certain green ogre, stories have many layers and shouldn't always be taken at face value. Though the analysis of deeper themes is often left to overzealous English teachers, there are narrative mediums that typically aren't examined in classrooms, such as video games, which often tell stories just as nuanced as any of the tedious texts we were forced to analyse in school. Some video games use straightforward allegories as part of their narrative, while others instead settle for easy-to-miss subtext. Regardless of how it's achieved though, the fact remains. Many video game stories have hidden meanings that went right over the heads of some players. Obviously, a rather large spoiler warning is in effect for the duration of this list, but it's also worth noting that the majority of these entries have been noticed by fans rather than confirmed by the developer themselves. Whether intended or not, each of these games appear to assert a very specific but subtle hidden meaning within their respective narratives. With that in mind, I'm Ashton from Triple Jump, and here are 10 video games with subtle hidden messages. Number 10, The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim. The story of Skyrim is traditional fantasy fare. A chosen one appears to fulfill an ancient prophecy by fighting an immortal evil dragon, and the player takes on the role of the Dragonborn and restores peace to all of Skyrim by playing through the game's multiple questlines. However, looking closely at Skyrim as a whole reveals an interesting running theme. Everything and everyone in Skyrim is divided or endangered, and the Dragonborn serves as the catalyst for change that the Icy North desperately needs. What's more, each separate questline sees the Dragonborn help a faction overcome a period of bad luck and rebuild towards a better future. Generally speaking, this creates a pretty pleasant subtext for the player to enjoy, that as long as there is hope, all is not lost. The beginning of the game sees the land of Skyrim plagued by power struggles and periods of unrest for various people, and it's the player's job to become a beacon of hope and metaphorically right the ship. Without the Dragonborn, the physical manifestation of hope, Skyrim is doomed. And it's only when they set out on their journey and begin restoring people's faith in a better future that things start to get better for the region. As it turns out, a little hope can go a long way. Number 9, God of War. After systematically cutting a path through the entire pantheon of Greek gods, 2018's God of War saw Kratos move on to live a quieter life with his son Atreus. The sequel concerns Kratos attempting to make peace with his violent past and fulfill his late wife's dying wish, accidentally coming into conflict with the Norse gods in the process. On the surface, it's a game about a man duking it out with various deities, and just below, there's a pretty obvious theme of redemption. However, there's another vein of subtext that runs throughout the game, taking a backseat to the more obvious narrative. At its core, God of War is really about the potential difficulties of parenthood. Throughout the game, it's shown time and again that being a father doesn't come naturally to Kratos. He repeatedly fights his instincts to give Atreus the patience and guidance the boy needs, but deep down, he carries the scars of his violent and vengeful past. Parenthood is often portrayed as a very cut and dry responsibility, but God of War paints it in a different light. Kratos, as an individual, doesn't find it easy, no matter how much he loves his son, and that's ultimately what makes God of War's story so poignant, despite all of its violence. Number 8, Call of Duty 4: Modern Warfare. In 2007, the FPS genre was changed forever by Call of Duty 4. Subtitled Modern Warfare, it presented just that, the realities of being a soldier in the present day through the lens of a cinematic and groundbreaking story. The player takes on the role of both British and American soldiers as they work to apprehend dangerous terrorists and prevent all-out war. Though it's not exactly hidden in the strictest sense, COD 4's story came with subtext that went over many players' heads. Though the game puts them in the boots of multiple soldiers in numerous conflicts across the world, Modern Warfare is distinctly anti-war. Ironic, considering the game's popularity sparked an uptick of military enlistment around the world. Through the eyes of various soldiers, COD 4 has players experience the horrors of war in the modern world. As well as suffering the deaths of multiple characters, players are treated to numerous quotes upon death, many of which are distinctly pacifistic in nature. So, as well as experiencing firsthand the brutal and terrifying reality of modern warfare, COD 4 players are bombarded with blatant visual clues to its anti-war leanings. Even so, this particular message seemed to be lost in translation, with many completely misunderstanding the intention of the game's story. Number 7, Fallout New Vegas. The story of Fallout New Vegas is almost as strange as the radioactive landscape in which it takes place, but that doesn't mean it doesn't carry a subtle hidden message. Players take on the role of the courier, who sets off across the desert to enact their revenge after a job goes wrong. Doing so puts them on a path to change the fate of New Vegas itself, and it's there that the game's subtle hidden meaning can be uncovered. From the very start of the game, it's clear that human greed and ambition still rule Vegas despite society being ravaged by nuclear war. Centuries after the bombs fell, there are still various characters and factions vying for control in and around the city, proving that the desire for wealth and power will survive as long as humanity exists. Though New Vegas makes it clear that ruthless ambition is as resistant as the game's mutated Radroach is, it also puts emphasis on the individual's influence over it. However, no matter what the player does, control of New Vegas passes to one faction or another, ultimately proving that society will always fall into the same patterns of capitalism or authoritarianism. It's about as bleak as you might expect from a franchise as apocalyptic as Fallout, but it certainly enriches the game's story. Number 6. Mass Effect 2. The Mass Effect trilogy is often held as one of the best examples of storytelling in video games. Well, maybe not that ending, but generally speaking at least. Nowhere is this narrative prowess more evident than in Mass Effect 2, in which Commander Shepard must work with their crew to uncover the true nature of the Reaper threat. Digging deeper, it becomes clear that Mass Effect 2 is all about survival. However, the game does offer one crucial caveat, that surviving isn't something that can be achieved alone. Although Shepard bears the responsibility of being the savior of the galaxy, the Spectre is really only as good as their crew. It's a common theme that runs throughout the game. The only way to survive the climactic suicide mission is to prepare with your crew, building friendships and forging alliances. Failing to do so results in the tragic deaths of your beloved companions, and the only way to beat the Reapers is through teamwork. The overall message is one of collaboration and inclusivity, asserting that humanity was never intended to operate alone. Fighting against the cold and logical machine threat can only be achieved by togetherness, which seems all the more wholesome against the backdrop of Mass Effect 2's sprawling sci-fi story. Number 5. Tony Hawk's Underground. The Tony Hawk's Pro Skater franchise is built around the most radical sport there is, skateboarding. As such, it's not really one that you'd expect to tell any kind of deeper story. However, the 5th game in the franchise, Tony Hawk's Underground, or Thug if you want to get conveniently abbreviated about this, does just that. Thug follows a skater who dreams big and skates bigger, only to be betrayed by their conniving and less talented best friend, Eric Sparrow. Sparrow cashes in on his principles in order to earn big sponsorship deals and all the fame involved with being a pro skater. And it's up to the player character to rediscover their passion for the sport, despite Sparrow's underhanded methods. The whole story actually seems to comment on criticisms for Tony Hawk himself, who is accused of selling out by having his name attached to a series of video games. Through Thug's story, Hawk addresses these claims by asserting that skateboarding is its own reward, and that fame always comes second to being the most gnarly and tubular dude there is. Though it may seem a tall order for a game entirely based around an extreme sport, Tony Hawk's Underground actually subtly communicates its message with an appropriate amount of heart. Number 4. Red Dead Redemption. For the most part, Red Dead Redemption wears its narrative themes on its dusty cowboy sleeves. On the surface, it's all about the pursuit of redemption and the unstoppable tide of progress, but it also combines these two ideas into another message that's easily lost among the countless duels, poker games, and arson attacks that the game offers. The ultimate message that Red Dead Redemption delivers is that the past is inescapable. John Marston spends the game trying to overcome his former outlaw ways, but finds himself repeatedly dragged back into the world of violent power struggles. The game infamously ends with Marston unceremoniously shot down by government agents, confirming that they were never going to let him continue his peaceful existence. Though Red Dead Redemption makes it clear just how much the world was changing at the turn of the century, Marston's intention to adapt to the future isn't enough for him to escape his past. Those in power see Marston as exactly what he always used to be. He was defined by his past, and so was also doomed by it. It makes for a poetically tragic end to Marston's saga, and asserts that redemption comes at a steeper price than the outlaw had bargained for. Number 3. The Uncharted series. As well as being made up of swashbuckling artifact hunting action, the Uncharted series also comes with a heavy undercurrent of subtext. Though each installment focuses on an entirely different lost treasure, there are recurring themes that have helped keep the franchise tonally consistent. Broadly speaking, the Uncharted games are all about giving history the respect it deserves. When you think about it, every single Uncharted villain has one thing in common: they all want to exploit the past for personal gain. Some are chasing unimaginable power, while others simply want to secure staggering wealth. But ultimately, they're all looking to twist the past to suit their own needs and desires. Though Nathan Drake is typically pursuing the same thing, he also has a healthy respect for the past, and that's what sets him apart from Uncharted's other treasure hunters. This subtly implies the only reason Drake was able to survive his brushes with historical magic and inevitable disaster is that he understands the past isn't there to be exploited. Those who fail to show history the proper respect are almost always killed for their trouble, while Nate manages to escape unscathed enough to continue his wisecracking ways. It's a message that runs to the very heart of the franchise, and is actually a pretty fair point, all things considered. Number 2. Braid. In the years since its release, Braid has been analysed to death. The game's staggering final twist makes the story truly unforgettable, which may just be the reason why so many theories have been suggested as to exactly what it really means. However, one of the most interesting theories is also one of the most compelling. Braid is secretly about the creation of the atomic bomb. The theory comes from the incredibly deep examination of the text that appears on screen between Braid's levels, some of which contain overt references to the Manhattan Project and even quotes from the scientists involved. However, even on the surface, Braid is a game about a man obsessed with the use of an incredibly dangerous power as a means to an end. Dark though it may be, it's pretty easy to see how this could relate to Oppenheimer's invention of atomic weapons. As the game follows a man blinkered by his obsessive pursuit of a goal and his heavy-handed use of a power afforded to him, the nuclear weapons theory paints the story in an interesting light. Though it may be unconfirmed, it certainly makes an awful lot of sense, and somehow it makes Braid's protagonist Tim seem even worse than the game's final twist already showed him to be. And number 1, BioShock. On paper, BioShock is about the underwater city of Rapture and the power struggle between Andrew Ryan and Frank Fontaine. But its story also has an easy-to-miss hidden message. When protagonist Jack stumbles upon Rapture, he finds it overrun with splicers, human beings enhanced with a gene-altering substance known as Adam. As much as BioShock ruminates on the dangers of unchecked scientific advancements, its story also conceals a cautionary tale about substance abuse. It's Adam that ultimately plunged Rapture into chaos, sparking all-out war and creating the Splicers. The repeated use of Adam had warped Splicers' minds, causing them to become violent and incredibly dangerous. However, Adam also affects Jack, who begins the game with unreliable memories and soon learns that he's far more suggestible than he'd like to be. Not to belabor the point, but all of the above are potential symptoms of substance abuse. Isolated from the potential help of the world above, Rapture's residents were effectively trapped with their addiction. It's only with the help of others that Jack is able to overcome his reliance on Adam, and even then, only if he makes the right choices along the way. It might not be the most obvious message, but it's one that adds even greater depth to BioShock's already beloved story.